Hello, I'm Will Hornyak, storyteller, and this is a story called The Adventures of Medio Pollito, The Adventures of Half Chicken, and I'll explain why it's called that in a moment. But this is one of the stories on my program, which is called Living Streams, Stories for Healthy Watersheds. And these are all stories about how you and I can be good stewards or caretakers to the Clackamas River. And my story is sponsored by the Clackamas River water providers. The Clackamas River, as many of you know, is where all our drinking water comes from. Our water, when we take a shower, flush a toilet, water a lawn or a garden, all comes from the Clackamas River. And the Clackamas River is 83 miles long. It comes from the Cascade Mountains and it flows through forests and farmlands and cities and towns all the way down to the Willamette River. And the Clackamas enters the Willamette River right near Willamette Falls in Oregon City. And some of you may know that for many, many years, for thousands of years, that confluence of those two rivers, the Clackamas and the Willamette, that was the home to the Clackamas Chinook villagers, Native American tribe who lived there for many, many, many generations. And of course, they fished for salmon and steelhead and eel and trout and hunted deer and bear and elk. And the rivers, of course, inspired their stories and their songs and lifted their spirits as well as providing nourishment for their bodies. So these are some stories to hopefully inspire and nourish us to be good caretakers of the Clackamas River. Now this is an old Spanish folk tale that I adapted a little bit to talk about the Clackamas River. And in Spain, or in Spanish, anywhere where Spanish is spoken, when you want to say a long time ago, you say this, you say, hace mucho tiempo. Can you try that? Ready? Hace mucho tiempo. Good. Hace mucho tiempo there lived a chicken. But this chicken, este pollito, he was un poco diferente que los otros pollitos. He was different than the other chickens because, well, you see, in vez de dos patas, instead of two legs, he had only one, solamente uno. In vez de dos alas, instead of two wings, he had only one, solamente uno. And in vez de dos ojos, instead of two eyes, see, solamente uno, only one. And because of that, because he had only one leg, one wing, and one eye, they called him Medio Pollito, which means half chicken. Well, mucha gente pensaría, a lot of people would think that a chicken with only one leg and one ala, one wing, and one ojo, one eye would be un poco tímido, a little bit shy. But not Medio Pollito. No, 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 no. When he was a pollito chiquitito, a tiny chicken, he said to his mother, he said, Mama, yo soy un pollito muy importante. I'm a very important chicken. Y yo voy a conocer el rey. I'm going to meet the king. And his mother said, bark, 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 bark. No, senor. No, Medio Pollito. Mira, look, the king lives a long way away. It's far away for a two-legged chicken. You have to cross many creeks and a big river to get there. Medio Pollito, you stay home with Mamacita. And if you're a good boy, one day we'll go for a little trip. ¿Está bien? Okay? And he said, No, Mama, por favor. Yo tengo lugares que ver, gente que conocer y cosas que hacer. I have places to see, people to meet, and things to do. And he said, Hasta luego, Mamacita. Ciao. Well, he already spoke a little Italian. And so, Medio Pollito, the brave, one-legged, one-winged, one-eyed chicken, he hopped out the narrow door into the wide, wide world and down the long road to meet the king. Ba-doom, 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 ba-doom. At the end of the day, he hopped all the way down to a creek. But this creek, well, it was not having a good day. You see, the people who lived on either side of the creek, when they built their houses and neighborhoods, they cut down so many trees and they pulled out so many shrubs. Well, there were no longer any trees to shade the creek and keep the water cold. And because there were no trees or shrubs, there were no roots in the soil to hold the soil. So whenever the rain fell, a lot of soil would wash into the creek. So after a while, the creek became filled with dirty, warm water. Yes, it looked sort of like this. It was all dirty and warm, and because of that, all the fish swam away. But one day the creek saw Medio Pollito hopping by, and the water said, Medio Pollito, por favor, ayúdanos, help us, please. Plant some trees and some shrubs. It'll clean the water and keep it cold. And Medio Pollito said, bark, 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 really? Just by planting trees, that'll clean the water and keep it cold? Yes. Well, Medio Pollito, of course, he said, bueno, yo soy un pollito muy importante. I'm a very important chicken, and I'm going to meet the king, but quizás yo puedo ayudar. Maybe I can help. And so little Medio Pollito, he did something that any of us really could do. He helped to plant some trees on either side of that creek. Now, after a while, the roots of the trees, you want to put your fingers out like this? The roots of the trees, can you imagine that your fingers are the roots? They grew down into the ground, and they would grab the soil tightly. Can you hold on to the soil tightly with your hands? Good. And that's what the roots of the trees and the shrubs and the plants do. They hold the soil tightly. So when the rain falls, it doesn't wash into the creek. And after a while, the trees grew, and the branches spread out. Can you spread out your branches? Nice. And they shaded the creek and kept it nice and cool. Look at this. After a while, just by planting those trees, the water, well, it grew colder and cleaner, and it looked like this after a while. It was cold and clean and healthy, and because there were trees now growing on either side of the creek, well, that provided a place for insects to live. And sometimes the insects would fall, whoa, into the creek, and that provided food for who? Yes, the fish. So just by planting trees, after a while, look who came swimming back to that creek. Do, 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 do. Yeah, rainbow trout. And of course there was salmon and steelhead that returned. Now look, because there were fish in the creek, well, that provided food for big birds like eagle and osprey and great blue heron. Yes. And of course other birds came back too. You know, crow came back, and crow's brother, raven, he came back too. Haw, haw, haw. Hey, raven. Haw, haw, haw. Well, pretty soon, just by planting trees, there were birds and there were frogs living on the stream bank, and there were insects and there were fish, and they all said to Medio Pollito as they went to go, they said, Gracias, amigo. And of course, what did he say? He said, Hasta luego. Ciao. Want to try that? Hasta luego. Ciao. Good. And Medio Pollito hopped down the road to meet the king. Well, the next day, Medio Pollito hopped across a bridge. And beneath the bridge, there was a river. And there, standing on the riverbank, right beside the river, there was this little, it was a frog. And the frog called out to Medio Pollito. He said, Medio Pollito, ayúdame, por favor, help me, please. I don't have any insects to eat down here. And Medio Pollito said, bark, 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 bark. You don't have insects to eat? Hey, that's a problem. I mean, that's what frogs eat. Why don't you have any insects to eat? And of course the frog said, Medio Pollito, take a look at this river. It's so dirty, it's so polluted, no insects can even live here. Look. Ooh. Medio Pollito looked and could see the river was quite dirty and polluted. And he wondered why it was, and then he looked up. And there, sticking out of the stream bank, there was an enormous storm drain pipe. Can you do that with me? It was a storm drain pipe. Those are big pipes. They're underground, but they carry water whenever it rains, you see, in our playgrounds, our schools, our parking lots, our neighborhoods, our sidewalks. The water, it flows down the gutter, down a storm drain, through a storm drain pipe, all the way to the river. And so anything we put in the street, the playground, the parking lot, the front lawn, the backyard, can flow down the gutter, down the storm drain to the river. And Medio Pollito noticed, he said, ugh. Because flowing out of that storm drain pipe, there were soap suds from when people washed their cars on the street. They were flowing into the river. Woo! Ugh. And then he saw there were candy wrappers and chewing gum from from playgrounds and gutters because people didn't pick it up, and it would flow down the gutter, down the storm drain to the river. And then he noticed there was even bits of dog poo. Ugh, woo! Because people walked their dogs and forgot to pick it up with a plastic bag. And of course the frog said, "Hey, Medio Pollito, tell the people in the city to stop polluting the river, would you?" And Medio Pollito said, "Bueno, yo soy un pollito muy importante. I'm a very important chicken, and I'm going to meet the king, but, well, I'll see what I can do." And so sure enough, Medio Pollito started hopping through the city. And now whenever he saw somebody that was doing something that wasn't good for the river, he would tell him, Hey, you washing your car on the street there. Don't rinse so many soap suds into the street. Just use a little bit of soap and a bit more water, because they wash down the gutter, down the storm drain to the river. If you get a lot of soap suds in the river, it'll kill little insects, and that's what the frogs need for food. And hey, you over there in the playground, don't throw your candy wrapper there, because anything you put in the playground, the parking lot, the street, the sidewalk, when the rain falls, it'll wash down the gutter, down the storm drain to the right, the river. And hey, you walking your dog, pick up the dog poop, would you, with a plastic bag. Otherwise, it'll wash down the gutter, down the storm drain to the where? You got it, to the river. Well, of course, the people, they listened to Medio Pollito because how often does a chicken tell you how to take care of the river? Exactly. Well, finally, Medio Pollito, he hopped through the city, and he hopped up to the palace door, and he was about to knock on the door to meet the king. When you know who looked out the palace window? Nope, it wasn't the king. It was el cocinero, the cook. And the cook was just wondering, ¿Qué puedo preparar para la cena esta noche? What can I make for dinner tonight? What can I make for dinner tonight? What can I make? And that's when the cook noticed Medio Pollito as he knocked on the door. Bark, 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 bark! Bark, 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 bark! Bark! Well, the cook, he looked out the window and he said, maybe I'll make chicken tonight. Well, maybe at least half a chicken. And the cook crept up behind Medio Pollito, very quietly, and he grabbed him by the scruff of the neck. And of course, Medio Pollito said, bark, 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 which means, hey, you put me down right now, put me down right now. And the cook, he said, I'll put you down. I'll put you down right here. And the cook put Medio Pollito down, poosh, into a big stew pot filled with water. And that's when Medio Pollito se dio algo muy importante, had a very important realization. Yo no puedo nadar. I can't swim. Ayúdame, help me. Well, that would have been the end of Medio Pollito. But look who was in the stew pot. Who was in the stew pot? Well, it was that water. But you see, it was the water from that creek that Medio Pollito helped out. Remember the creek that he helped out? Yeah. And the water that was in the creek was in the stew pot now, and the water said, hey, it's you, Mr. Important Chicken. Yeah, we remember you. You helped us out when we lived in the creek. Now, how did Medio Pollito help out the creek? Can you remember? He planted trees, good. And remember, the roots of the trees held the soil so it didn't wash into the creek. And the branches shaded the water and kept it cold. And of course, inside the trees, at times, bugs came to live, and sometimes they would fall into the river, which made food for the fish, which made food for the birds. Exactly. Yeah, and so the water said, Medio Pollito, you helped us. Well, we'll help you. And the water very carefully lifted Medio Pollito up. Gracias. And he just did the backstroke around the top of the stew pot there. And he was doing okay until the cook, remember him? He said, Bueno, es el tiempo para cocinar mi pollo. Ha ha ha, time to cook my chicken. And the cook, he lit a match, and he threw it beneath the stew pot. and flames began to dance around the stew pot. Now, can you be the dancing flames out there? Ready? Do 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 do. Yeah, do 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 do. And the fire burned brightly, and the water got very hot, and very very hot. And Medio Pollito said what chickens say when they're getting very 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 hot, which means help! I'm getting really hot. Well, just like that, the wind blew through a window. Can you be the wind? Exactly. But it blew harder. And it blew so hard, it blew the fire out. Yeah. And then the wind spoke, and the wind said, Medio Pollito, yo soy el viento, I'm the wind. And I'm helping you because you helped me. You planted plants and trees, and that helps to keep the air clean and clear for everybody. Gracias, Medio Pollito. Thank you. And then the wind blew away. Ready? Well, Medio Pollito was doing okay. But once again, remember the cocinero, the cook? He came back. Bueno, es el tiempo para probar mi pollo. Time to check my chicken. Should be done by now. And the cook lifted the lid off the stew pot. And he noticed there was Medio Pollito in the stew pot, just doing the backstroke in a hot tub. Hey, this is kind of nice, but could you turn it up a little? Oh, the cook got so mad. He said, I'm going to fry this chicken up once and for all. And Medio Pollito said what chickens say when they're about to get fried up. Bark, 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 bark. And that means, I'm out of here. And Medio Pollito jumped out of the stew pot, and he raced across the kitchen floor. But the chef ran right after him. So he jumped out the window of the kitchen. Woo! Poosh! And the chef ran right after him. Now Medio Pollito was quick, but the chef was faster. And now as he came closer and closer and closer and reached down to snatch Medio Pollito up, un viento muy poderoso llegó, a very powerful wind arrived. Ready? Can you be the wind? Good, and it blew harder. And it blew so hard, it lifted Medio Pollito 200 feet into the sky. Whoa! But he came down, woo! And he landed right in the middle of the street. But it just so happened that the rain was falling really hard that day. Can you slap your thighs and make it rain? Yeah. And the rain, it lifted him up. It carried him down the gutter, down the storm drain. Woo! And out to the river. Exactly, because that's where the storm drains go, right? Well, Medio Pollito was floating down the river. Help, help, yo no puedo nadar, I can't swim. But he happened to float right by a little frog. Remember the frog? Yeah. And the frog said, hey, look who it is. It's you. It's Mr. Important Chicken. You know, I'm eating a lot better now. I have a lot more insects to eat. The river's a lot cleaner. Yeah, Medio Pollito, thanks a lot. Well, the river was cleaner because Medio Pollito told people to do a few things differently, right? Like, if you're walking your dog, take a plastic bag and pick up the poo. Exactly. If you're washing a car on the street, just use a little bit of soap and a bit more water, or maybe even move the car onto the grass or a dirt lot, because that's better for the river, because the soil can digest the soap suds better than the river can. And also, if you're in the playground or the parking lot or the street, should you throw litter there? No, because everything, when the rain falls, will wash down the gutter, down the storm drain to the river. And Frog said, hey, yeah, you helped me, and I'll help you, Medio Pollito. And so Frog carried Medio Pollito all the way across the river and dropped him down on the bank. But look who was hiding behind the bushes. I bet you can guess. That's right. It was El Cocinero. And now he came up, and just as he was about to snatch Medio Pollito up, once again the wind arrived. Ready, wind? And this time the wind carried Medio Pollito across the sky. And Medio Pollito said, bark, 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 Help, I can't fly. And the wind said, Medio Pollito, I am helping you. You helped me, and I have a good place for a very important one-legged, one-winged, one-eyed chicken. And the wind carried Medio Pollito into the middle of the city and dropped him down way up on top of a tall steeple, like a tower on top of a big church. Dropped him down on his one leg there, and he put on his one wing, and way up there, as the wind blew, Medio Pollito turned this way in the breeze, and that way, and the people down below, they looked up and said, hey, have you noticed that chicken up there? You know, you can tell exactly which way the wind is blowing by watching him. Medio Pollito became famous. He became a weather vane. Yeah. And you see, every day he'd go up there and stand up on that steeple, and he met the king and the queen. His mom came to live with him at the palace. Well, he even made friends with the cook, who never tried to cook him again. And every day he'd go up there, and his friends would come by to visit too. Of course, the wind came by all the time, and the water came by as the rain and the clouds and the fog, and even the fire came out as the rays of the sun. And of course, way up there, when Medio Pollito saw anybody way down there doing something that was good and not good for the river, oh, he would tell him, bark, 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 bark. Hey, you, thanks for planting the trees and the plants down there. That's a good idea. Yeah. Hey, you, nice job making that compost pile. That's really good for the soil, you know. Hey, you, pick up the dog poop, would ya? Yeah. And of course, the people always looked up, and they would say, Gracias, amigo. And that is the story of Medio Pollito, a very important chicken. And so, I hope you've learned a few ideas, simple things that you can do, that we can all do around our houses, our schools, and neighborhoods to keep our beautiful Clackamas River, the source of our drinking water, clean and healthy. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks so much to the Clackamas River Water Providers for sponsoring this program.